Hello and welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, James clues me in on some phrases you can use with collaborators or clients to lead a conversation. We're not sure. We discuss this very thing, why you'd want to use phrases like this, and what it means overall to be able to communicate with the people you're working with on a creative project. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, Pat.
Yes, James.
So, not that we have ever had an argument or a disagreement,
That's your thing? Okay, sure. I'll go along.
right? It's been placid sailing in this creative collaboration.
Not sure I like your tone.
Well, help me understand.
Oh,
I have a powerful new set of tools that I have picked up in case we do have our first argument.
can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, it's a list of phrases.
Okay.
They're simple phrases to help regain control if you have a disagreement in a creative collaboration or with a client.
Okay.
So 1, help me understand. 2, here's what I'm thinking. 3, let's explore this together. 4, let me reflect on that. 5, can you elaborate on that? 6, I understand your perspective. 7, I appreciate your input.
Wow.
Now, how do those phrases make you feel?
Well, they make me feel, what's the word? I appreciate these phrases because they make me laugh. And the way you say them makes me laugh. Here's what I'm thinking. Actually, I'm thinking about how would they apply to a collaborator. Well, you and I collaborate, and honestly, we are so far beyond these phrases, it's ridiculous. I mean, if you used one of them, I'd be like, are you okay? What's going on?
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah. Not that you're not diplomatic as needed. And we do talk about a lot of quite painful personal events, particularly with both our parents being extremely elderly, how tough that is on the caregivers. And my mom died, so I appreciate your input. I'm joking. I would, here's what I'm thinking. See, I can't take them seriously. I just end up down a rabbit hole. Okay, so collaborators, maybe not so much because I need to trust somebody a great deal in order to collaborate with them on anything. It's almost like I need to feel like they're like me in that they're not gonna need to be managed. Basically, if we have a disagreement, we can just say so. It's not a matter of trying to regain control because I'm not looking for control. I don't want to convince a collaborator of anything, I want to collaborate, and which doesn't require me to have control. In fact, it requires the opposite.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me laugh about these in that context. As far as with a client, there are useful things, and I do have variations, I guess, on these, which these are all ways to pause a discussion.
Yeah.
To one degree or another, right? And I only ever deal with clients online, usually, as in the written format at first. Once we engage with each other, then we meet on video. And on video, I think I have a different vibe, really, than I do in print, because you can see my face, you can see how I sit and everything like that.
You can see expression, tone of voice.
And also I'm very approachable, I feel. You might not agree.
No, I agree.
Okay. And partly it's because of teaching. You can't teach if you're unapproachable. It's more difficult, I would say, because you want people to question your assertions, really, when you're teaching. I think that's the best way to run stuff. But in print, I have run into occasions where a client tried to sort of bums rush me into saying yes to a project before I had adequately reviewed it to my satisfaction. And so I would use phrases that sort of slow things down, as in.
Yeah. Well, I would, you're a pretty straight up person who I would say probably tells the truth at least 60% of the time.
How dare you? Gee, that's
Right.
not on
But
there.
no, you would say, hey, wait a minute, you're pushing too hard. You're moving too quickly. I need to get more comfortable with the material.
I would never say you're pushing too hard or you're moving too quickly. I would actually say, here's my process. First, I see your material. Then I write you a short memo with a quote. I never lay it on their behavior. I say, this is my process. And if we're going to work together, this is how I approach discovering
Right.
whether the fit is right. So yeah, I'm not as blunt in print as I am in real life.
Okay. So, yeah, no, that's funny. I'm blunter so if I'm editing, I'm blunt only because I try to use as few words as possible so that you don't cloud the meaning.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you try and be like gentle and kind about it, then people aren't going to get like, you need to change this and here's exactly how, and here's what's wrong.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But I think if I was in an interaction with just about anybody, creative or otherwise, client, and I started leaning on phrases like this, I would have to really reevaluate my emotion in that moment. Because these feel like the passive aggressive Hall of Fame phrases. It's like you can imagine the statement after each one of them, help me understand, you twat. Here's what I'm thinking, you dumb piece of, I mean, it like each one just has that. I'm trying to control this moment and I'm trying to control my emotions around this moment and I'm trying to control you, as opposed to, like you said, a collaboration, or even working with a client is a collaboration.
It is. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I would have to evaluate, am I angry?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes sense. I mean, I would even look at it as a more open-ended question. Like if you get to the point where you feel you have to, I do take exception to the words regain control. I don't think anybody should be in control in any interaction, not one person. I mean, yeah, if you're teaching, you got to regain control of a classroom. That's not what this is talking about. This is talking about two people talking with each other. I don't take exception to the ones saying, let me reflect on that. I would say, let me think about that. That's how I would put it, because reflection implies a longer period of thinking. What I'm really saying, if I say, let me think about that, is I don't know yet. I actually have to think about it. And I'll usually say it that way. I don't know yet. I have to think about that.
Yeah.
Because I do. It takes me a couple of days sometimes to think about whether I want to do something. And anytime I get rushed into doing something because I don't feel safe saying to the person, I need to think about that, that's a red flag right there, that the person I'm talking to, I don't feel safe telling them I need to think about something. What's their problem? Like, why don't I feel safe? So yeah, there is you're right. The trigger, what all of these trigger is needing to look inside yourself and figuring out what's below the need to control an argument, or the idea that you can even control an interaction with somebody else. I mean, I guess the one that says, I understand your perspective, is that objectionable? Not really, if you mean it, if you do understand.
Well, but if you're in an argument, right, and you say, I understand your perspective, you're saying, I get what you're saying, but you're wrong. Like, that's just another softer way of saying you're wrong. I understand what you're saying and you're wrong, and you don't understand what I'm saying.
Well, you're adding words to the sentence, but I think you're probably right. Nobody would say that without then adding but.
Yeah.
Or, and here's mine, something like that. I think maybe if you could say, let me just see if I understand your perspective, and then reflect back what you think you heard. That's more of a sort of a less controlling, I guess.
Yeah. But I would do that,
figuring it out.
Yeah, I mean, I do that anyway. I mean, that's part of
what
I do, because you have to make sure that you really understand what somebody's saying, so that you're both on the same page, have the same vision for what you're trying to do and all that kind of stuff. So, you say it back, you reflect it back, but rephrase it so that they can say yes or no, and, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think too, part of this is, do you feel safe in that conversational space with somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole concept, I think, is a little, it's not that these phrases wouldn't be helpful when you're talking to other people. Help me understand. What's wrong with that? Can you explain it in different words? I've had misunderstandings in my 30-year marriage where I had to ask Rich, I don't understand exactly what you're saying. Can you say it a different way? And that wasn't an attempt to control anything. That was actually an attempt to try and understand so that I could really respond, properly and effectively to what he was articulating. I just didn't understand it, and that's fair enough. So there's nothing wrong with most of these phrases. Here's what I'm thinking. You have to say what you're thinking. I don't know that you need to use any of these unless you don't feel safe or unless you think the other person maybe doesn't feel safe. You might say, let's explore this together to somebody when all you're getting is sort of a rigid, defensive stance on something. You might say, what if we look at this as a thought experiment? Just depending on how you talk, right? I would say sometimes if it's a thought experiment, then what do you think? This is a dumb example, but let's say somebody that has relied on me is asking me for rides all the time and I don't want to. And then I might say, well, how about we do a thought experiment where we think about different ways that you could achieve getting to where you need to go without pulling me away from my office.
Yeah. Let's explore this together. And maybe this is exposing defensiveness that I feel, not now, but, generally, feeling defensive, because there's also a kind of, when, to me, I feel like if somebody were to say that to me, it would be like, I'm going to take control of this conversation. And by saying, let's explore this together, it's not, let's have a shared experience. It's, I'm going to guide this because I don't like where we're going.
So you have a lot of projection and subtext in your thinking around these phrases.
Yeah. We can get into the psychology of that,
I mean, that was quite aggressive, what I just said. I'm not insulting you.
Yeah, no, but it's true. I mean, I didn't take it as an aggressive attack or anything. I think it's true. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they feel fake. That's why, I guess. And, they're all 4 words. 3
Here's
to 5
a question. Has anybody ever tried to use, I'm going to call this psychobabble, but has anybody tried to use this kind of psychobabble on you to try and influence the outcome of a conversation, an argument, or even to put you in a box in a relationship?
I mean, you know what? I don't think I'm aware enough to know that because, I'm not looking at agendas when I'm talking with people, except in more rare occasions. Sometimes, if I see somebody on a social media doing this kind of shit, I'm like, well, they're not talking to me. But I've already made up my mind about them, right? Nothing they can do is going to change it, except maybe if I met them in person and they turned out to be actually a really nice person. So do I know when I'm in a conversation, do I know when I am being manipulated, or do I get a sense that I might be being manipulated? Never, almost never. I don't know why. I just don't have that on my radar. And I think I don't ever try to manipulate other people in that way. I'm too blunt, really. So it's like I don't have that skill myself. So how about you?
Yeah, in different contexts, right? So my mom would use not these phrases. She was smarter, but she would use stuff that had sort of picked up and trying to figure things out, because I was not an easy kid, right?
Right.
I was a troublemaker and all kinds of things, and very oppositional in some ways, right? And so I remember very specific instances where my mom would approach me from a very sort of rehearsed kind of way.
Wow.
And I would recognize it. But because it was my mom and because I had so much respect for my mom, and I loved her, I would say, okay, this is important to her. I need to listen up.
That's cool.
Right. This is when I need to shut down, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Is what I would say. But then I've been in relationships that were, for whatever reason, failing, and there's a lot of tension. And I would say, certain competitiveness and all these things that can happen at the end of a relationship where somebody is coming because they're trying to win.
Right.
And that's where these phrases, that's where they lead me to, is
Yeah.
somebody is trying to win interaction that I don't feel is one where it should be about a winner and a loser.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
That makes sense. Oh, I totally understand it then. Yeah, I haven't had that same life experience. So let me ask you something. Do you use anything like this with clients? How do you manage that aspect?
No, I think I'm the same as you. I'm direct.
Yeah.
I think we've all had the experience of a client wanting to do something that just doesn't make sense, or wanting to do something that you've said to them 100 times. That is the very wrong approach. It doesn't work that way, or something like that. But they keep pushing because they can't. They're like, but this time is different. I'm different. Kind of. And so then, like, I don't ever want to be mean to somebody. I don't like anger and all those kinds of things. So sometimes you have to be, no, I highly recommend that we not do this, because, and then I state my very, solid rationale, or what I feel is my very solid rationale. But then there's a point, if it's a client, then, it's their project.
Yeah.
And if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. If it's a creative collaboration, then I think I really lean more towards, I need to take some time to really think.
Yeah.
Because why am I having so much resistance to something that somebody feels is actually the right thing to do?
Yeah.
How can I be wrong in this situation?
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, I try to do that. So I have, it's very rare, but once in a while there will be, I don't really like the term high maintenance, but there will be somebody whose requests tend to not have been thought through from more than one perspective, i.e. theirs. So they're asking me to do something that would be incredibly time consuming at my end, and it wasn't in the original scope of work. And whether or not they offer more money, they're seem to not be taking into account the fact that I have other clients and that I only have so many hours in a week. So in those cases, I try to be as diplomatic as possible in saying, this is whether if I think the thing is worth doing. That's one thing. I'll say I can absolutely help you out with that. It will need to be this block of time 3 months from now, because I'm completely booked up with other work that I've already committed to. But sometimes if I think it actually goes against their best interests to do the thing that they're suggesting needs to be done by me, I'm still as diplomatic as possible. But I do say this is not something I would recommend. And I think you can probably, I try to give them other resources. If someone on Upwork offers that service, I'll put the link in my email and say, this is not something I recommend doing, but if you did want to proceed with it, here's a possible person you might hire to do that. And then it's up to them. It's out of my in basket.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. There's just times where somebody's going to do what they're going to do. And if they're going to do it, okay.
Yeah. And if I can find a way to help them not get ripped off trying to do this thing, then I'll do it. I had somebody ask me the other day of a course I'm going to start teaching again in a couple of weeks, if it was, if it had been registered with this particular public assistance program for tuition for retraining. And I checked with the school owner. No, it hadn't been registered. And so I gave them links to 3 different courses that may or may not have been registered and said, here's other courses. This one isn't and has no plans to be registered, but here's other courses that more or less teach the same area, not the same way, but they teach the same area, and good luck. Try to redirect their attention to another provider so that I'm not the person having this conversation with them over and over.
Yeah, because I'm not always the right fit.
Yeah.
That's, a big piece of it too. And I try to, I've incorporated in my process trying to figure out right fit, wrong fit.
Yeah, me too.
Sometimes it gets, for various reasons, a wrong fit comes through, and you've got to be able to, honorably navigate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to meet their needs without actually turning my workflow upside down in order to accommodate something that I don't want to do, So, but I still try very hard to educate on why I don't want to do stuff. And then, or why I don't think it's a good idea to have it done, period. Yeah, we're getting a little off track, but I think the phrases, I think we agree, are sort of BS. But they do speak to a larger kind of attitude, which is there's no control to be had if you're in a true collaboration, which also includes client work. All you can do is be completely honest with the person as diplomatically as you're capable of being, and let the chips fall, because you don't need to be in control. That's not the purpose of communicating with people.
Yeah. And it doesn't lead to the right outcome. And I think if you find yourself looking for, like, I need phrases to, dominate's not the right word because people don't think that way. But, if you're I need ways to get this person to do this thing.
Yeah.
And maybe a little more internal reevaluation is called for. And this is a skill like anything else that a creative,
Yeah. And very diplomatically put, by the way, a little more internal reevaluation. And just to add, the headliner that we're talking about for these 7 simple phrases was about regaining control. But there's the other idea that's bigger than that, is that with control comes responsibility. So if you are not prepared to take responsibility for the outcome, then don't try to control.
Boy, that's the truth. Yeah. Yeah, because if you do manipulate and use subterfuge and all kinds of things to get control, to get your way, and then in the end it doesn't work, the project doesn't get picked up or it fails in some way, you have just taken ownership.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Be prepared. All right. Awesome.
Thank you for helping me unpack this. See? Was that passive aggressive? I don't even know.
Well, yeah, I brought this up for a reason, Pat.
I appreciate your input. Let's explore this together. Here's what I'm thinking.
Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Hope you have a great creative week.